Chair, I'll do it in there for you. I'll hit each one of you with the different things. The way that you won't put you in the hot seat.
You're all right.
Chair, Pat, you talked about the eco scheme in relation to farmers and difficulties. The figures we have, just that you'll have them there, is that 91% of all farmers under the new eco scheme have qualified already. They don't have to do any other measure because they've over the 10%. Then there is 4% of farmers that have between 7 and 10%, which is they have to do one measure. So where is this big problem with the eco scheme that you're on about? That's the question to Pat. I go to Brian next. And the question I have for you, Brian, you talked about, say, the new system coming in on the cap. Now, I've nailed my colours to the mast because I would have seen a lot of farmers, and you talked about BIS and you talked about the smaller farmer that it could affect them. We deal with a lot of farmers right around the country that might have €80 of an entitlement per hectare. And when you look at the new system that's coming in place with what they'll be brought up to on the 30 hectares, they'll probably go for between about 4,000 up to 7,000, which I wouldn't call bad, to be honest about it. But the one thing I would ask you, and I want to know your view on this, when John and every farming organisations over the last number of years, we would have encouraged young farmers in. They had to do a green cert and they had to spend time at it. And their payment, and in fairness, young farmers were happy with it. When you added the two together to be roughly about 260, 270, wouldn't that be fair to say, per hectare? And are you telling me that a young farmer that comes in into farming, that does a green cert, that wasn't out in 00 or 01 when the punching of the bullocks was on, and if you were unlucky to have heifers, you got damn all, and if you were lucky to be punching cattle twice, you built up €700-800 a hectare. Are you telling me that that young farmer isn't as valuable to us in agriculture as the person that's getting the €700 or €800? And it has fairness. Has a hectare in Mayo or Kilkenny or Kerry or wherever not to be treated the same, the way that we try and give fairness to all farmers? That's your question, Brian. Next thing I'm going to John. John, just a thing you highlighted, in fairness, a few weeks ago, about the father. Now, the minister was in here today, and for you all to know, he said he's opening it, and in fairness, I heard you were first on it, highlighting it. He has said today that he's opening it for the young farmer. Isn't that correct, Chair? In June or July for the young farmer. So just that you'll know that one. But in relation to the forgotten farmer, John, it hadn't been mentioned here yet. Could you bring me up to speed on what's the story on that? And you mentioned land scarcity. Is the land scarcity right around the country, or is it where probably dairy has increased, is the question on that? In relation to, I'll go to INFHA, you mentioned on acres. Now, the drift we're getting today is that a decision has been made tomorrow. Wouldn't that be fair to say, Chair? And I'd say it shall be positive. I'm not the minister, but that's the drift we're getting today in relation to an extension that you'll know about that. We'll know tomorrow, seemingly, and I agree with you, it needs an extension. But Vincent, you mentioned, my understanding is now, you've made a statement that farmers cannot access acres in SACs. My understanding is, yes, they can, and I'm just trying to fathom what you're saying there, or is it an extra payment under it? And am I not correct in saying that if you're in an SAC, you go into priority 1, not 2 or 3 on that? And also, will you elaborate on the sheep thing? Because I know that all the farming organisations has been on about the sheep. Say with meal gone up, and Brian Rush talked about organic meal earlier on. With the way meal has gone up, the sheep man seems to be, that's fattening a lamb or whatever, is in trouble with the. Is there any more room there, is what I want to know. And you might also talk about organic, what you think is the uptake in it? Because I think it's fairly substantial. And to the ICSA, Dermot, the suckler cow, and you pointed out there about the suckler cow, what's your understanding of the first 10 cows between Beep and, under the new scheme, Beep and this new suckler welfare? I don't know, there's a new name on it. And how will farmers struggle on the suckler sector in relation to everyone having to be on board BFRD, is my understanding. But am I correct in saying that the first 10 cows would, and I want to know the exact figures, am I correct in saying that it would be over 200 for the first 10 with Beep and suckler, and then after that it comes down less? Or can you give us the figures on that? And what's your estimation of the suckler cow, say with the new cap, going forward in the line of DEC, you know, as we are hearing at the moment that there could be 40,000 of a reduction this year? What's your view on that? And to them all, if you want to, or let one of them take it at the end, in the line of the TAMs and money, or John Kane can take the money for young farmers, that we need a new access basically for young farmers, but in the line of the TAMs, what's the feeling coming out of the department in trying to make sure that we have enough of money there and to increase the threshold? Because concrete was €85 a while ago, it's 120 now, so like that won't, you're going to get less or less money for trying to do the same job. Okay, thanks. Now.
Okay. We'll start over here, and I'm putting you on a clock. See, ask a few questions, or 3 minutes each. John.
Deputy Fitzmaurice, I suppose, why are we bothered about the eco scheme? I think the reason we're bothered about it is that, you know, it's been created by a 25% reduction in everybody's payment, you know, effectively. Probably all farmers in this country are starting off or facing up to a 40% reduction in their payment when you take account of eco, CRIS, young farmers, budget cuts, etc. So that's where we're starting from. And I suppose the figure we have, to be straight on Space for Nature, is that around 60% of farmers will be over 10%. Yeah, well, we certainly would have got 60%, to be straight with you. And I suppose what we find with these figures, they change over time, to be quite honest with you. You know, I think on cow bending, it started off, I think, 15% of farmers will be in bend 3. We now are hearing a figure heading well over 20%. You know, so these things change, and they normally change in the wrong direction for farmers, to be straight with you. And I suppose, why do we bring up milk recording and why do we bring up solar panels? You know, we need to give farmers options in relation to get, you know, this is a reduction in their income just to start off with. We need to give them options. The solar panel certainly is a very strong environmental measure. The milk recording, you know, there's a big emphasis on AMR, antimicrobial resistance. There really is nothing in the cap that addresses that issue, and we felt the milk recording was a very strong one under Eco Scheme, was available to farmers, incentivise farmers to go for that option. And I think, you know, we certainly hear what you're saying on the Space for Nature. The figure we got was not 91%, it was certainly below that. And we need to give farmers options. There's other options there, obviously. There's using GPS fertiliser spreaders. You know, that's 25 or 30,000 investment for a farmer, not an option, to be quite honest. I know you can get my contractor, not every contractor has that equipment. You know, I could plant trees or hedgerows. Again, on inspection, all those trees have to be alive. You know, with the best will in the world, if I plant 50 trees, you would be hoping they'll all live, but the reality is they won't, and same with hedgerows. You know, you have other options there. You know, there's an option there for arable farmers. That doesn't suit every farmer in the country. So we felt there needs to be a better menu there to suit farmers and give farmers the opportunity to carry out measures on their farms that help the environment, that help AMR. And I would hope your figure of 91% is right, but certainly that's not the figure. Yeah, that's not the figure we got, Michael, to be quite honest with you. Your question on the TAMs, can you just, what was yeah, I think.
Did you talk to the department about trying to get, or any farm organisation, about trying to get more?
Yeah, I think, look, the issue there, obviously, you know, I know it's come up at farmer charter meetings, the reference costs really are completely, they're just not representative of what's happening on the ground. Like, we are facing the Michael levy next September as well. And, you know, there's a strong emphasis out there that farmers need to do more on the environment, We're not getting the support we require. You know, I think our President mentioned dairy vision and beef vision. You know, the funding is not coming. We don't have indexation. You know, so, you know, people can talk about the environment, but they need to match it with the funding, to be quite honest with you.
Okay, Mr. Rush.
Thanks, Chairman, and thanks for the question, Deputy. I suppose I have no problem with supporting young farmers. I called it out in terms of a key threat to food security and the survival of the sector, or the vibrancy of the sector. I think it's important we support young farmers to get involved. My ultimate issue is convergence and the effect convergence has on farms, in particular those farms which have a small overall payment but a large payment per hectare. So that is a 20-hectare part-time farmer in the Midlands who was, who was probably punching out cattle or extensification, doing everything they could back 20 years ago, and they had a high payment per hectare, or they even stacked payments. They stacked when they could stack. Those farmers are going to be hit savagely with convergence.
But what about the fella that had the €8, or do they not deserve to come up? Like, this is what I'm saying to you.
In terms of, well, IFA would have been quite clear that, we would have pushed for a policy at one time of upward-only convergence. Because that's the problem with this cap policy, and it was hugely divisive around the country. But it's not like, at times it was placed as being regionally divisive, as in, maybe the South and the Midlands was losing and the West was gaining. Like, that's the way it was put forward. It's not. It's in every parish, it's in every county, it's in every townsland. And throughout our meetings, we had farmer meetings on that. It was the farmer, the part-time farmer, doing a good job at home, working hard off farm as well, who had a high payment per hectare that was going to be hammered with convergence. And they were the farmers that were raising the biggest issues with us around the country, regardless of where it was. I totally get your point, Deputy, in terms of those farmers in low payment per hectares and how they will gain from convergence. I understand that. But, if you look at how is that farmer now that's going to be hit on convergence, how is that farmer going to replace that income lost? And if you look at acres, the issues with acres...
The only thing I'm saying to you, Brian, just one second. The only thing I'm saying is that a young farmer this minute on the 20 acres is able to get the 250 or 60 between the eco or whatever you want to call it. If you were, that's what anyone can get today. So if you were on €700 before that, that's what a young farmer has to live on today and still work. That's what I'm saying.
It's very, like, the amount of farmers that have been on €700 per hectare
or 5 or 4.
Yeah. But the point being is that none of those farmers, you're moving a farmer that was part-time farming, a high payment per hectare, and you're moving them into the vulnerable zone. And the current suite of measures put forward, the proposals, whether the agri-environmental schemes, isn't enough to take them back up out of there. So that would have been something we would have pushed on. That farmers that were hit with convergence, there had to be a way for those farmers to get their payment back up. And we're not seeing that. We're just not seeing that.
Okay. Mr. Keane.
Thanks very much for the questions, Deputy. Your first comment, I suppose, in relation to the fodder support scheme, would welcome that news, and it is something which we had been working on over the past couple of weeks. In relation to the forgotten farmers that you mentioned there, Deputy, at our recent national conference, the Minister was in attendance and verbally outlined 6 different criteria which the Department were planning to apply for the forgotten farmer category. We have asked for those to be written to us in a written format to be sent to us. We're still awaiting that, but I can call out to the committee the 6 verbal measures that the Minister said at our conference 2 weeks ago to apply for the forgotten farmers, and these were as following. If you're going to be successful, you needed to be head of the holding before 2008, have essentially a green cert or level 6 completed by 2015, never having access to National Reserve under the BPS or the SPS, never have been in receipt of installation aid, completed a BPS application in 2015 and be no more than 40 years of age in 2015. We are now, I suppose, 11 days since our national conference on that Saturday, and I have received and have more phone calls to make, but about 60 or 70 phone calls in that period of time, and our policy officers as well. I have yet to have one forgotten farmer, when I've outlined the 6 criteria to them, to say that they're going to be able to access the scheme. So we have criteria for a scheme where I've yet to see one farmer who's going to be able to access the scheme yet under that. So we recognise that in the programme for government there is a commitment for addressing the forgotten farmer issues under CAP. We were working very hard with the Minister and the Department this time last year and longer ago to try and get that included. We informed that there wasn't scope for that within the Common Agricultural Policy and it would be looked after internationally. Our interpretation and the feedback we've got so far is it'll take a very small pool of money to satisfy the demand from the forgotten farmers that are going to be able to apply for that based on those criteria, because we've yet to have somebody to contact us to say that it's going to be accessible to them. So there's a huge amount of work still to be done there from our side of things. In terms of the question around land scarcity, Deputy, there is high demand for land in certain areas at the moment. That would be a fair comment to make. But what we're looking at here is all policy instruments in the round and the impact that they're going to have on land availability into the future, given that right now one of the biggest challenges for young farmers to get into the sector is land access. If you look at the recommendations that have been put forward by the likes of the Food Vision Group, if you look at the recommendations here under the CAP, if you look at 4 of the options under the eco schemes, if you look at the options under organics, if you look at the EU Nature Restoration Bill, and if you look at the issue around policies for both forestry but also for energy production, they're only going to do one thing in terms of land availability, and that's going to reduce land availability. And we would argue that that's going to be land availability in every parish in the country, not just in areas where there is already pressure on leasing of land and the prices of land at the moment. So there is pressure in some areas at the moment, absolutely, and land rental prices are reflecting that. But long term, the general thrust of these measures that are being proposed across all policy instruments are to create a greater demand for land access, because either stocking rates will be less, more land in organics, less land in productive areas, and that's going to affect everybody. And top that with the 350 or 60,000 hectares that are spoken about being re-wetted, it's only going to do one thing for land availability.
Okay, I say.
Okay, thanks. Deputy, we all know that the new sucker efficiency scheme is 150 for the first 10 cows and 120 after that. And it's a choice of reference years. You must pick 3 years or 5. The beep is basically all over. It's gone. They took the way out of the beep and they were put into the BGDP. So this year, at the moment, between the two of them, the first 10 cows is 185 and 160 above that. We know that the budget has been, there has been an allocation of 28 million for a replacement for the beef scheme. That's probably €70 a cow for the first 400,000 cows. We are talking to the department about suckling welfare issues and maybe testing for myostatin to try and get something to get that up and running. That needs to be up and running for 2023. As for, you said about farmers, the cap moving, in the smaller areas, so I mean, 11 to 30 hectares running 40 cows was probably above the national average. He had 9 or 10 grand, and he's probably down to 8 or 9 or 7. So, but that's the story about the sucklers. And you mentioned about beer. A lot of suckler men were never inside the factory in their life, and they probably never will. They set all their stock on the mat, and why they're made to join beer is beyond me. It's another expense that people don't need. If they need a cabin navigator, it's not rocket science to get that planner to do it.
You just mentioned 3 figures there. Come back to me again. 150 for the first 10 and 130, and then you mentioned
150 for the first 10 and 120 above that is the new scheme.
You mentioned 175 and you mentioned something else, did you?
This year, at the moment, you want GDP
but I'm on about
and beep.
Right, okay.
And for this year, the beep
How much
together,
is the beep on its own?
100, pardon?
The beep one on its own, how much is it a calf?
The beep one was working out around €80 a cow.
Okay.
So this year, you had the two of them together. This year, you got 185 for the first 10 cows and 160 above that. Now, the weighing is gone, so the beep is gone, but they're talking about bringing in a new scheme. But the present scheme, that all we know at the moment, the new suckler efficiency scheme is 150 for the first 10 cows and 120 above that. There's a 28 million allocated in the budget, which should deliver €70 a cow for the first 400,000 cows, which would put the 120, 150 up to 220, and the 120 be up to 190, like, do you know what I mean? Okay. If we get to 70, but that's not, okay. That scheme is not started yet, but that money was allocated in the budget. Whether it will come or not, that you will get the good mind.
Okay, Mr. Roddy.
Yeah, if it's okay, Chair, I'd like to bring in Joe Condon for the question just on the organics. He is an organic farmer, if that is okay. And I'll just take the other two first. I will be brief. Look, thanks for the question, Deputy Fitzmaurice, and the opportunity to be able to provide the clarity. Just as regards the SSE and SPA land, the Natura lands, as you say, yeah, all farmers on those lands will get access to acres, and they are, as you say, a priority asset. So they will get access to acres. So that's a positive. That has been the case though with all schemes, whether it be REPS or AOS or GLAS. The issue and the point I was making is that in the other schemes, they got a direct payment in recognition of the fact that those lands were designated and the burden that designation imposed on those farmers and the cost of that burden. So that's the point I'm making. And in this CAP plan and in this agri-environmental scheme, it's the first time we're not going to see a specific payment for that cost. And when you add that in, the fact that in GAIAC, in the GAECs, the 38 activities requiring consent for farmers of designated land has also been subsumed in there, then the idea of recognising the cost of designation, and there is a cost. There's a substantial cost. I know we spend money ourselves that other farmers wouldn't have to spend in getting planning permission for fencing. So that is there. A lot of other farmers on designated land would have done the same. It is also important to note, just when we talk about those costs for farmers with designated land, when we're looking at TAMs, if there is farmers, if they have designated land, then they have to get permission to actually fence that, which isn't included as part of the TAMS grant. So before they actually put down any post at all, they're probably going to have spent €2 or €3 or maybe €4,000 in getting permission to do that. And I think that's something we need to recognise. So there is a cost there, and I hope, glad to get the opportunity to clarify that.
Okay, sorry, you're going to let Joe answer
just
on
in
the
relation
organics.
to the sheep. Sorry?
You're going to Joe answer on the organics, so you're going to run out of time.
Yeah, just one thing in relation to the sheep. Look, I mean, Deputy Fitzmaurice, you did make a great point. Look, we do need more money there. Our first concern there, I mean, it's great that we have the sheep, and it's good. I know, I think you would have been very helpful in getting that sheep welfare programme in place that first time, and obviously others. So it's great that that's there. €12 is not great. There's no point to say now. I'm not going to say, look, you'll never turn away money. But we have to also recognise there is a problem in sheep at the moment, because what we are hearing in factories is there's an awful lot of breeding ewes now being slaughtered out. So I'd be quite concerned about the confidence in the sector at this point. We're on about breeding ewes that should be there. So I'll pass over to Joe, and thanks for the opportunity.
Joe, briefly now.
Yeah, just on the organic, just a couple of comments on it really. The reducing the age of slaughter and reducing the age of calving to 36 months as being proposed recently, that would be completely against the principles of organics. This isn't my opinion. You go through the organic regulation, Article 4, Article 6. So basically, that would be, they're talking about using animals with a high degree of genetic diversity, disease resistance and longevity. I mean, all of those proposals are completely against longevity. I believe there is an opportunity to make organic attractive to farmers with commonage. There are advances in precision farming technology, and they have the ability to demonstrate that organic animals can be kept separate from non-organic animals in a commonage situation. This does not mean that the commonage is organic, and it doesn't require that the organic be paid on, but it would make the enclosed land much more attractive for those farmers to join organics. I believe that if there was a possibility maybe of some type of a trial or a test run to do on that, if the department were willing to have a look at it. The other thing I'd like to comment on is GAEC2, and there were some contributions made earlier on in the thing that GAEC2 is linked to re-wetting. This is I'd like the record to be clear that there is no requirement for re-wetting under what the department submitted to Europe in their CAP strategic plan. So basically they're looking for examples of appropriate minimum standards may include a ban on ploughing or minimum till or no till. So there is no requirement for re-wetting. I'd like that to be corrected on the record. Re-wetting, if you're talking about food security, re-wetting is going to be one of the big elements that's going to lead to a massive reduction in production in those areas. They're talking about looking for 187,000 hectares of land for anaerobic digestion, close to 700,000 hectares of land for re-wetting. The amount of land that's going to be taken out of production, and then you have forestry on top of that. We'll be in here very, 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 very soon on that food security issue, as far as I'm concerned, if some of these ideas go through. Now, the Minister is meeting on the 21st of November. He's meeting the Council of Ministers on the nature restoration laws, and I believe maintaining all of our lands, the hill lands and all of those areas as agricultural areas, based on the vegetation on the land and the agricultural activity, I believe that that's absolutely vital if we're going to protect food security in this country. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Okay.